Hi, so this is just a quick video. Um, I talk a lot about my Italian culture, and I wrote a book about Italian folk magic and my practice and all that stuff. And the book that I wrote centers, primarily on Central and Southern Italian folk practices. But I'm a little bit more than that, like most people. I'm very complex. And my mother was my late mom was from what is now Croatia. And I just wanted to come here and just talk a little bit about a book that I recommend. I recommend because I think it's the only one in the English language. And basically, um, it's very hard, it's a very difficult subject to talk about. Where my mother was from, Italians, after World War II, um, there was a genocide, and Italians fled as the borders were redrawn at the end of World War II. Um, there followed like 15 years of shit. Or, no, sorry, I misspeak. 13 years of shit, absolute shit for Italians in those regions. And I'm not going to go into too much detail. What I am going to do is I'm going to recommend a book. This book is called A Tragedy Revealed, The Story of Italians from Istria, Dalmatia, and Venezia Giulia. So if your people are from there, I highly recommend this book. It's a little thin, but it's really better than nothing. And to help you understand where you come from, because I don't know, like in my case, my mom was like quite traumatized by what had occurred, and she suffered with mental illness her entire life. And it was really difficult to find relatives who were willing to speak about this when I was growing up, specifically because I was being raised by my father's side of the family. But also, it was quite, how can I put this? It wasn't talked about at all. And in 1999 was the first time that something was published. This is the English translation of it. And I'll read to you. Anyway, so A Tragedy Revealed, The Story of Italians from Istria, Dalmatia, and Venezia Giulia, 1943 to 1956, by Arrigo Petacco, translated by Konrad Eisenbichler. As the Second World War drew to a close, European borders were being redrawn. The regions of Istria, Dalmatia, and Venezia Giulia, nominally Italian, but at various times also belonging to Austria and Germany, fell under the rule of Yugoslavia and its dictator Marshal Tito. The ensuing removal and genocide of Italians from these regions had been little explored or even discussed until 1999, when the esteemed Italian journalist Arrigo Petacco wrote L'Esodo, la tragedia negata degli italiani d'Istria, Dalmatia e Venezia Giulia. Now this story is available in English as A Tragedy Revealed, this book. Petacco explains the history of the regions and how they shifted between empires for centuries. The greater part of the story, however, details the Yugoslav communist government's evacuation and genocide of the native Italians in the regions. Based on previously unavailable archival documents and oral accounts from people who were there, Petacco recounts events and exposes the Italian government's mishandling of and then official silence on the situation. This is a riveting work on a little-known tragic event written by one of Italy's most highly regarded journalists. Arrigo Petacco is a journalist, author, and historian living in Liguria, Italy, and Konrad Eisenbichler is a professor of Italian studies at Victoria University, University of Toronto. So, if your people come from here, and you want to learn more about where you come from, I highly recommend this book. Another book that I have on this subject is a little harder to find. Years ago, a relative sent me Xerox copies of a section of the book that talks about my mother's family, my relatives, my ancestors. And I can't find it. I have it I stored it in a safe place. But this is the book that I recommend. So if you read Italian, I highly recommend this book. It's a big one. It's very this is the 4th edition, and it's quite a dense read, quite a disturbing and dense read. But if your people come from here, you need to know your history. You need to know the history of your people. And this is L'esodo dei 350.000 giuliani, fiumani e dalmati by Flaminio Rocchi, or P. Flaminio Rocchi. And this basically is, in this book, it's an account, it's a cataloging of the events by date and time and territory. There are families mentioned, family names, what Italians are subjected to. I'm sorry, friends, it's not a light read. This is not a light read. This is definitely not a light read. This one, do an Amazon search. This one pops up quite frequently on Amazon through third-party sellers, used books, that kind of stuff. Or just do a Google search for it. Here, I'll hold it up. And this is basically the title. It's the exodus of 350,000 Giuliani, Fiumani, and Dalmati. So people from Venezia Giulia, Fiume, and Dalmatia. On a lighter note, they also have a cookbook, but I just wanted to bring this up because I know a few people from, like, through website and like just from interacting with Italian Canadians and Italian Americans. Also, I think I know a very small handful of people that their families came from Pola and Gorizia and Istria and these places, Yugoslavs, but of Italian ethnicity. Or Italian citizenship, because again, it's kind of hard to tell with that area of the world. People may have been ethnically Italian who were descendants of Slavs and Russian, and you know what I mean. Like it's a little confusing, just because politically the borders moved around so much. But yeah, so I just wanted to come on and say, hey, if your people come from this place, or even if they don't, and you want to learn a little bit about Italian history that no one really talks about, I highly recommend, if you read Italian, this one. If you don't, this one. This one, I still see it on Amazon. And that's it. So that's all I wanted to talk about today, about this subject. It's a very hard subject for me because of how it affected my family directly. So I recommend that, again, I'm repeating myself, but if your people come from there, I suggest you read that. If you have any interest at all. If you're from Italy, or if you're of Italian descent, and Italian origin, and you don't know where you don't even know where your family comes from, you might want to add this to your reading list. Just because it's something that needs to be read about. It needs to be known more. There just isn't much much talk about it. And yeah, so that's it for me. And I'll be back with another video. Bye-bye.